At my brother's wedding, it was like I didn't exist. My name never came up in the speech, I wasn't in the slideshow, and I got cut out of the family photo. When I asked what was going on, his new wife gave me this little smile and said, "Honestly, we didn't want side characters in our memories." I just shrugged, went back to my seat by the exit, pulled out my phone, and quietly froze the final payment to the caterer. Let's just say the guests sat there with empty plates, and the first course never left the kitchen. You know that crushing feeling, that gut punch moment when you realize the people you loved, the ones you bled for, didn't just overlook you, they erased you? Yeah, that happened to me, at my own brother's wedding. And what I did next? Well, it pretty much brought the entire facade crashing down. My name's Elias, and I'm 32. For as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet, dependable one in our family. Not invisible, not exactly, but definitely not center stage. While my brother, Noah, could light up a room with his booming laugh and magnetic charm, I was the guy making sure the lights stayed on behind the scenes. You know, the one who remembers every anniversary, picks out thoughtful gifts, handles emergencies without making a fuss. I don't resent it, not really. It was just the role I'd slid into, or maybe the one no one else wanted. Noah and I were never close. Not in that dramatic shouting match kind of way, just distant. He was the golden boy growing up, star quarterback, homecoming king, the whole package. I was the academic, the quiet achiever. Our parents loved us both, sure, but it was always obvious who they admired. I learned early on that it was easier not to compete. So I supported him. I clapped the loudest at his games. I helped him cram the night before finals. I lent him my car whenever his was in the shop. That was just our dynamic. When he got engaged to Serena, I didn't expect to be the best man. I didn't even expect to be in the wedding party, to be honest. I'd met her a few times, enough to know she was sharp, confident, and meticulously image-conscious. She had this way of scanning a room that made you feel like she was mentally critiquing everything, the table settings, your shoes, the way you held your glass. I got the distinct sense she tolerated me more than she actually liked me. Still, when Noah called me last year and said, "Hey man, I know you're not big on crowds, but I'd love for you to help with the wedding," I smiled and said, "Of course." I figured he meant logistics, some tech setup or something. I'm good at that. What I didn't realize was that help meant handling the entire catering contract. They were planning this swanky, 200-guest wedding at a vineyard 2 hours out of town. Expensive, picturesque. They wanted a plated dinner with 3 options, hors d'oeuvres during cocktail hour, signature drinks, the whole 9 yards. Noah explained they were a bit tight on funds, but wanted it to be perfect. Could I handle the down payment for now, and they'd reimburse me after the honeymoon? I agreed. Stupidly, maybe, but again, I've always been the reliable one. I've done well in software consulting, so I didn't think twice about floating the $8,000 deposit. I even coordinated with the caterers directly, arranged the menu tastings, managed timelines, and signed the service contract in my name. It wasn't just a financial favor. It was a trust thing, and honestly, I was proud to help. The lead-up to the wedding was chaotic, as weddings always are. Group chats exploded. Serena had a vision board that seemed to change daily. Noah kept accidentally forwarding me tasks meant for the wedding planner, like arranging shuttle buses and coordinating with the florist. It became a running joke among my friends that I was the unofficial wedding planner. I brushed it off. It was family, right? But then things started to shift. Subtly at first. The wedding website went live, and I noticed I wasn't listed in the wedding party. Fine, whatever. Then came the seating chart, which I saw during a planning dinner. My name was slotted at table 17, right next to the exit, grouped with a couple of Noah's college friends I'd never even met. When I gently asked Serena if there'd been a mistake, she gave me this tight-lipped smile and said, "Oh, we just figured you'd prefer something low-key. Didn't want to overwhelm you with too much attention." That stung more than I expected, but I told myself not to take it personally. It was their day. I'd handled the logistics. I didn't need fanfare. I was there to support, not be celebrated. Then came the rehearsal dinner. It was held at this sleek rooftop venue overlooking the city skyline, strung with fairy lights and live acoustic music. Everyone was dressed to the nines. There was a slideshow playing on a loop, a montage of childhood photos, vacation memories, clips of Noah proposing on the beach. I sat through 20 solid minutes of curated nostalgia before I realized something chilling. I wasn't in a single frame. Not one. Not even the group family shots. My mom leaned over at one point and said, "Isn't this beautiful? Serena did such a great job with the photos." I forced a smile and nodded, but inside, something started to crack. Then the speeches. Serena's dad gave a long toast about her resilience, her grace, her leadership. Noah's best man, his old college roommate, told stories about frat parties and late-night cramming. My name didn't come up once, and when it was Serena's turn to speak, she raised her glass and said, "To everyone who shaped who we are today, the people who lifted us, challenged us, and made us feel like main characters in our own lives." A few people clapped. I didn't. After dinner, I caught Noah by the bar. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I noticed I wasn't in the slideshow. Was that intentional?" He looked sheepish. "Oh man, I think Serena put that together with her cousin. They just picked the highlights, you know. No offense." I nodded slowly. "And the seating chart?" Noah hesitated. "Serena's idea. She said you're not big on crowds. Wanted to give you space." It was such a bad answer. So rehearsed. And for the first time, I felt like maybe I wasn't just overlooked. I was deliberately excluded, pushed to the margins. The day of the wedding arrived, and the venue was stunning. Picture-perfect weather, rolling hills in the background, a violinist playing under a canopy of ivy. Guests sipped cocktails and took selfies in front of a flower arch. I helped coordinate the catering staff as they set up, wearing my nicest suit, trying to stay invisible. Just a background character, right? During the ceremony, I sat quietly in my seat by the exit, watching my parents beam with pride as my brother choked up when Serena walked down the aisle. It should have been a beautiful moment, but I felt numb, like I was watching strangers. The final straw came during the reception. After the couple's first dance, Serena and Noah made another round of speeches, thanking guests, acknowledging their families. "We're so lucky to have such supportive parents, incredible friends," Serena said, her voice sweet and confident. "And of course, to everyone who helped bring this vision to life, you know who you are." No eye contact, not even a glance in my direction. I was mid-sip of my drink when I finally stood up. I walked over, waiting until there was a lull in the applause, then approached Serena at the head table. I kept my tone light, almost eerily calm. "Hey, can I ask you something?" She turned, a little surprised. "Sure." I smiled politely, just wondering why I wasn't in the slideshow, the speech, or even the family photo earlier. Serena tilted her head, and then she did something I'll never forget. She smirked, that smug, satisfied little curve of her lips. "Honestly," she said, flicking her gaze down my suit like I barely registered, "we didn't want background characters in our memories." I just stared at her. The room felt very quiet, though I'm sure it wasn't. Somewhere behind me, a fork clinked against a glass, but I was too busy replaying that sentence in my head. Background character. I nodded once. No anger, no scene, just a quiet, measured step back. Then I returned to my table, pulled out my phone, and opened the email chain with the caterers. The final payment, $11,100, was scheduled to process at 5 p.m. It was 4:56 p.m. I clicked cancel. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" I tapped yes, and then I sat back, folded my hands, and waited. I watched the party unfold like a detached observer in a dream. Laughter echoed off the vineyard walls. The DJ transitioned from soft background jazz to the first real dance set of the night, and guests started to loosen up. Serena was twirling in her custom lace gown, Noah grinning ear to ear, drinks flowing like liquid gold. No one noticed anything amiss at first. Why would they? Appetizers had made their rounds during cocktail hour. Everyone was buzzing from champagne and filtered sunlight. But then something shifted. At exactly 5:23 p.m., I saw the catering staff slow down. One server walked briskly toward the head coordinator, Ava, with a furrowed brow. Another checked a clipboard, lips pressed into a line. They began whispering near the kitchen door. 2, then 3, then 5 of them. I could see the confusion ripple outward like a stone dropped into still water. Ava, who I'd coordinated with over email a dozen times, made her way across the courtyard. Her heels clicked urgently against the flagstone as she approached the head table. She leaned down to Serena and Noah, whispering discreetly, but clearly with tension in her voice. Serena's smile faltered. Noah blinked, then frowned. I watched him glance toward the catering tent, then toward me, not accusatory yet, just puzzled, still trying to process. I sipped my drink. Ava straightened up, her face now visibly flushed, and headed back toward the kitchen. Meanwhile, servers began quietly removing the plated silver chargers from the empty dinner tables. No main courses had been served yet. They were supposed to start the plated service at 5:30 sharp, beginning with the head table, but now the silverware was being collected, one table at a time, like a slow, unraveling thread in the middle of a wedding tapestry. A few guests began to notice. Murmurs started. "Are we not eating? I thought dinner was next. Maybe they're running behind." The DJ, oblivious, played on. Serena stood abruptly, her pristine dress shifting like water as she walked with purpose toward the catering tent. She passed by me without a glance, which was fine. I wasn't looking for a confrontation. Not yet. Noah followed her, less composed. I could tell from the stiffness in his shoulders that the mask was cracking. 5 minutes later, they returned. Serena red-faced, Noah stone-silent. A waiter followed behind them with bottled water and nothing else. And that's when it happened. One of Noah's groomsmen, probably a little too buzzed for tact, laughed and said, "Wait, was dinner canceled?" He was joking, of course. But when Serena spun around and snapped, "We're handling it," the entire table went silent. The murmurs spread like wildfire. I caught snippets. Guests asking each other if they should leave, if this was some kind of delay, or if they'd missed dinner altogether. Someone asked if they could order DoorDash. Another joked about whether the open bar would survive the stampede if food wasn't coming. I stayed seated, calmly, nursing my second glass of whatever I was drinking. I wasn't hungry anymore. Serena and Noah huddled again with Ava. She was trying to call someone. I assumed the catering owner, but I already knew how this played out. The contract was in my name. The deposit was paid months ago, but the remaining balance, necessary to continue service, had been stopped just before the food was plated. The kitchen had likely prepped it all, ready to go. But without the payment, they weren't delivering a thing. And since the venue didn't allow outside food service unless previously approved, Serena had no options. At around 6:05 p.m., Noah made his way to my table. I could feel the shift in the air as he approached. His jaw was tight, eyes stormy, but confused, like he still hadn't decided whether I was a villain or just a variable in a wedding spiraling out of control. "Hey," he said, sounding strained. I turned to him, not unkindly. "Hey, did you cancel the catering payment?" I took a long breath. "Yes." There was a pause, just a heartbeat. "Why?" I looked up at him, not with anger, not even resentment, just clarity. "Because your wife told me I was a background character in your memories, and I realized I've been paying to stay in a story I was never really a part of." He didn't speak. I added, "You asked me to help." I did. I've helped with everything quietly, without complaint. But if I'm just set dressing to be placed near the exit, if I don't even deserve a line in the credits, then no. I'm not funding your fairy tale anymore. Noah ran a hand through his hair, glancing around. "You could have just told me." I raised my eyebrows. "Would you have heard me over the applause?" There was no comeback for that. Not a real one. He just stared at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. Then he turned and walked back to the head table, where Serena was visibly fuming. Guests were checking their watches. A few were gathering their things. The spell was breaking, and no one could quite figure out why the magic had stopped. But I could. I stood up, buttoned my blazer, and slipped out quietly. No scene, no drama, just the background character fading to black. And as I walked toward the parking lot, I heard one of the servers explaining politely to a guest, "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Unfortunately, we've been asked to pause all service due to non-payment." The guest gasped, "What? But who?" And I smiled just a little as I stepped into the evening air. By the time I reached my car, twilight had settled in. The vineyard lights twinkled behind me like distant stars, beautiful, untouchable, and no longer my concern. I didn't drive away right away. I sat there for a minute in the driver's seat, engine off, hands loose on the wheel, listening to the muffled chaos drifting over from the courtyard. It was surreal, honestly. A wedding unraveling in real time, not because of some natural disaster or scandal, but because I'd quietly stopped holding everything together. And for once, I wasn't rushing in to fix it. My phone buzzed. First, it was a text from Noah. "Elias, please just call me." I stared at it. Then, another from my mother. "Did something happen? Serena says you sabotaged the reception. Tell me that's not true. No. Are you okay? No. What happened?" Just straight to accusation. Classic. And then a third. This one from Dad. "You need to apologize to your brother. Fix this before the guests leave. We're humiliated." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I turned my phone on silent and slid it into the glove box. I wasn't ready for their side of the story yet. I was still sitting with mine. I ended up driving back to the inn I'd booked for the weekend. Not the fancy on-site lodge where most of the wedding party was staying, but a quiet little bed and breakfast about 10 minutes down the road. I'd picked it originally because it was cheap and tucked away, but now it felt like the smartest decision I'd made all month. When I got there, the innkeeper offered me a glass of port and asked how the wedding had gone. I gave a small laugh and said, "Eventful." I didn't go into details. I just sat in the cozy lounge, sipping my drink while the fireplace crackled, and let the weight of everything start to lift. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the start of it. The next morning, I woke to a full inbox. 26 messages, most of them from family, some from guests, a few from numbers I didn't even recognize. I opened one from my cousin, Sophia. "Okay, what happened?" One minute we were drinking sangria, next minute no food, Serena in full meltdown mode, and then someone said you walked out. "Did you seriously pull the plug?" Because low-key that was kind of iconic. I smirked at that. Sophia had always been one of the few family members who got it, who saw how often I played the role of the invisible support beam while Noah basked in the spotlight. She wasn't mocking me. She was impressed, maybe even proud. But not everyone felt that way. By 11 a.m., I'd gotten voicemails from my aunt, my mom again, Noah twice, and Serena's mother. That one was particularly venomous. "Elias, I don't know what kind of personal grudge you're holding on to, but you ruined the most important day of my daughter's life." She was devastated. This was her dream wedding, and you made a mockery of it, right? Because nothing says dream wedding like humiliating your future husband's brother and treating him like a second-class guest at his own family's table. Still, I was beginning to feel the weight of it all again. The guilt, the whispers of doubt. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe I should have waited until after the event. Maybe I should have just let it slide. But every time those thoughts started to creep in, I heard her voice again, crystal clear in my memory. We didn't want background characters in our memories, and it all came rushing back. This wasn't just about a slideshow or a speech. It was about a lifetime of being quietly dismissed, of being useful but not cherished, needed but not valued, of being the safety net that everyone forgot to thank as they walked the tightrope. Late that afternoon, Noah showed up at the inn. I wasn't expecting him. I told no one where I was staying, but Sophia must have mentioned it to someone. Or maybe he just called around. Either way, I looked up from my seat in the garden when I saw him walk through the gate. Suit wrinkled, tie gone, dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired. "Elias," he said, stopping a few feet away. I nodded. "Noah." There was a long silence. Then he sat down on the bench across from me and said, "I don't even know where to start." I waited, let him fumble. "You really canceled the payment?" I nodded. He ran a hand through his hair. "People left hungry. Some didn't even stay for the cake. Serena's parents are furious. Her aunt flew in from Florida. It was a disaster. I didn't respond. She cried all night. Still, I said nothing. Finally, he looked at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. And he asked, "Why?" I took a deep breath. Because for once, I wanted you to feel what it's like when I stop holding everything up. When I stop doing the invisible work. When I stop pretending I'm okay with being erased. He didn't say anything. So I kept going. I've never asked for the spotlight, Noah. Never tried to outshine you. But I've been there every time. Every call, every bill, every crisis. And I never complained. But your wedding, that was the first time I felt like I didn't just not matter. I wasn't even welcome to exist in your story. He looked down at his hands. I didn't know Serena said that to you. Would it have mattered? He paused, then softly. I don't know. There it was. Honest. I let that hang in the air between us for a while. The wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a bird sang. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy but not unbearable. Eventually, he asked, "Can we fix this?" I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the balance of power shift. Not in a cruel way, not out of revenge, just equal footing, something we'd never had before. And I said, "That depends on what you're actually trying to fix." Noah didn't reply immediately. He just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring at the gravel path like it might spell out the answer for him. I didn't rush him. For once, I didn't feel obligated to fill the silence, smooth things over, or cushion the blow. I'd spent years doing that, making everything easier for everyone else. Felt foreign, almost luxurious, to just wait. Eventually, he sighed and said, "I think I've spent so long being the center of attention that I forgot what it meant to actually see the people around me." I didn't respond. I wanted to see if he'd keep going. He did. I mean, when we were kids, you were always just there. The one who fixed things. Handed me tools when I didn't know what I was doing. Bailed me out when I blew my allowance. Helped me pass econ. I guess I started treating that like a given. He looked up at me, eyes rimmed with tiredness. I didn't realize how much I was taking. He was trying. I'll give him that. But I could still see the edge of discomfort in him, like he was struggling to accept that the world didn't just revolve around him, now that someone had finally said no. "Serena's not a bad person," he added. I didn't flinch, but I felt the twitch of resentment bubble up. I kept my tone even. "She didn't just forget me. She erased me intentionally." Noah winced. "I know. I talked to her about it last night. She didn't handle it well." "Noah," I said quietly. "She called me a background character to my face. That wasn't a joke. That was how she sees me. How a lot of people in this family see me." He didn't deny it, just lowered his gaze again. "I've always accepted scraps of gratitude because I thought that's what being the good son was about. But this time, you stood by while she humiliated me in front of 100 people. And the only time you said anything is now that it's affecting you." He blinked, and for a second, I thought he was going to push back. But instead, he just nodded slowly, like the weight of that truth was finally settling on his shoulders. "I'm sorry," he said, quiet, real. I let it sit for a beat before nodding. "Thank you." We sat in silence for a while after that. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't hostile either, just honest, uneasy, but needed a kind of reckoning that had been 2 decades overdue. Eventually, Noah stood up. "We'll pay you back for the catering. I promise." I shrugged. "It's not about the money. I canceled the payment because I needed you to feel what it's like when I'm not quietly absorbing the hits. You don't need to pay me back, but I also don't owe you more than that." He hesitated like he wanted to argue, but instead he nodded again, then offered a hand. I stood and shook it, feeling the weight of 1,000 unsaid things in the grip. Then he left. The next few weeks were revealing. I didn't hear from Serena, which didn't surprise me. From what I gathered, she and Noah had a massive fight the day after the wedding. Apparently, her parents blamed him for letting the catering disaster happen, and her aunt, the one who flew in from Florida, publicly called the event a glorified cocktail hour with dresses. Ouch. They postponed their honeymoon, citing stress, family drama, whatever excuse played best on Instagram, I guess. Their posts changed tone. Less perfect couple, more humbled by life's challenges. I noticed Serena scrubbed a few of her pre-wedding reels that included clips of the slideshow. Guess the backlash got to her, or maybe someone pointed out how pointed the omission had been. What had surprised me, though, was the response from the rest of the family. My mom texted me the next day with a half-hearted, "We should talk." I ignored it. 2 days later, she called. I let it ring. Then she emailed, said she'd had no idea how excluded I felt and that of course I was valued. But you know what? I didn't respond, because I realized something important. The people who genuinely care don't wait until a scene is made. They don't need an empty banquet hall to realize they left someone out. And I was done playing the game where I had to scream to be seen. Dad eventually called too. He was more direct, more uncomfortable. Said he didn't condone what Serena said, but that I shouldn't have made such a public statement. I told him, "Dad, the most public statement was them erasing me from every part of the wedding and pretending it was fine. I just held up a mirror." He didn't like that, but he didn't argue. What surprised me most was the number of guests who reached out. Some messaged me on Facebook. Some emailed me directly. Sophia even forwarded me a group text from a few of the cousins saying, "Honestly, Elias was the only one keeping that event together. Serena owes him a speech." One guy, a friend of Noah's I'd met once at a birthday dinner, sent me a message that just said, "I'd have paid you to cater my wedding if I knew you had the stones to pull off what you did." That one made me laugh. Eventually, I got dinner with Sophia. She raised a glass to me and said, "Here's to the background character who finally flipped the script." I clinked her glass. Here's to never being in the background again. A few months later, Noah emailed me a scanned copy of a check, full reimbursement for the deposit I'd paid. I told him again I didn't need it, but he insisted. So, I donated it quietly, anonymously, to a local food pantry in our hometown, the same one our mom used to volunteer at when we were kids. I didn't post about it, didn't brag, just figured if that money couldn't feed wedding guests, maybe it could feed someone who'd actually appreciate it. Now, I keep my distance. Not in a dramatic way, just intentionally. I don't show up out of obligation anymore. I don't let guilt dictate my calendar. I still love my family, but I'm finally loving myself more. And that means setting boundaries, saying no, knowing my worth. A few weeks ago, I got a wedding invite in the mail from another cousin. The RSVP card had options for will attend, will not attend, and one that said, only attending if Elias is catering, in tiny handwriting someone had clearly added later. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. Because somewhere between being the forgotten brother and the guy who canceled dinner mid-wedding, I became a story. A legend even. Not bad for a background character. Not bad at all.